Arsenal win the FA Cup again in their long history in the competition, winning against Chelsea in a 2-1 scoreline, as well as future thoughts regarding Aubameyang's future at Arsenal and whether he will stay, alongside some other transfer news and our Wonderkid to watch. Let's get started with that FA Cup. Now, the FA Cup, Arsenal versus Chelsea. Arsenal getting that upset win against Manchester City earlier in the semifinals, and of course Chelsea winning against Manchester United. Going into the game, I really did think that Chelsea would win. Just looking at the team, like the lineup, and looking at the game, I have to say it is kind of lucky in or just some circumstances didn't go Chelsea's way. It was kind of lucky on Arsenal's part in terms of the red card decision against Kovacic, which was that wasn't a red card. That was way too harsh, and the referee that was a wrong decision from him. As well as three key players, or two key players specifically, being lost in the early in a good part of the game. They were gone for a very large part of the game for Chelsea. Azpilicueta and of course Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic scoring that goal, and I mean he's been in fine form, and he would be the player that leads Chelsea to a potential FA Cup final win, and he would be a major part in that. And unfortunately, he got a hamstring strain, I believe. His hamstring went out, and Azpilicueta earlier in the match, his hamstring went out as well. And you really can see the disruption in the defense after Azpilicueta got that hamstring injury that just really that he had to get out, and unfortunately, it doesn't look good for both players. So they will be missing the Champions League match against Bayern. But just overall, losing those two key players, it really just lowered Chelsea's chances of winning the game, because Azpilicueta, after he was gone, there was no really leadership in that defensive line, and they were just they were in all sorts of trouble when that happened. Christensen went on for Azpilicueta, but when he went on and the entire defensive line, they just didn't look really organized, and Arsenal was really battering them on that end. And they were lucky that they were able to hold out for a little while longer, and they kept that draw. And then going into the second half, it didn't continue holding that draw. And fortunately for them, they did concede a goal against Aubameyang. Aubameyang's goal was really, really, really nice, very, very nice. But looking at Arsenal and how they played, I think there was some of course, both teams weren't really strong defensively. They haven't really been this entire season. But looking at some of the way they tried playing out from the back, Arsenal for certain parts of the game, especially when Chelsea was on the the front foot, excuse me. And I don't think that's really effective if they're planning on shooting long balls forward, and Aubameyang, for example, getting those long balls. That was working, and it was really unsettling the Chelsea defense. But then they tried playing out from the back and doing some stuff that just is completely unnecessary, and they don't have the players to do that. They don't have the players who are good enough on the ball, and just to really play out from the back. And Chelsea's pressing was really putting a lot of pressure on them, and fortunately for Arsenal, they were able to avert that danger. But just if they continue to do that, I don't see what's the point in playing out from the back when you don't have defenders that can play out from the back. I think David Luiz's long balls are really nice though, and I think that could be something they could look at. But again, they just need more defenders. Now, looking at Arsenal, Arsenal's talisman, who really won them that FA Cup, was Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And at the end of after his interview after the match, where he's talking about how he's happy, right? And they asked him, "Are you gonna stay?" And he's like, "No, I don't want to look at that right now. I just want to focus on the win." And Rio Ferdinand, I was listening to his commentary, his analysis. He said that looks like a player is gonna leave. I don't really believe that, because of course, just looking at what's ahead of him at Arsenal, I think he has a great future ahead at Arsenal, in terms of potential great rebuild project that's happening at Arsenal. They've already won an FA Cup, which is impressive considering that Arteta took the job in the latter half of the season, alongside the team just looking far stronger. And uh, Ferdinand himself said that he could leave, but he has a great, environment that he can stay at in Arsenal with the fans loving him and the players and a manager who's competent. I think that that is another reason for him to stay. I think highly likely that Aubameyang will stay. I mean, he's 31 years old. I I don't really see what else he could look for unless he wants to move to a big team, but then chase trophies. I think what is available at Arsenal, I think, is more important in terms of staying at a club that adores you and respects you, and you're the captain and the leader and the key figure in all the success that Arsenal has. I think that by holding on to Aubameyang and appealing to that specifically, I think that he will stay at Arsenal. I think the only reason that he won't stay at Arsenal is if he gets confirmation or he gets uneasy answers about investment in the future, because I think that it will be a big reason if he does leave. It will be because they're not ambitious in that transfer window, because what they have ahead of them, what the players that are at the squad are talented, the young players, they need to get investment in order to build for the future, and really specifically get investment in that defensive line, because they have a lot of talent in that attacking in the attacking parts of the team. They just need a little bit of in the midfield and of course the defensive line. And overall, I think those the main things that will appeal to Aubameyang is of course the environment that he's in at Arsenal in terms of the fans adoring him, and of course the squad as a leader. But some of the things that will offset it will be, of course, the main thing is what is the future life for him at Arsenal? Will he be able to get more trophies at Arsenal? Will his team invest in the squad at Arsenal? And will the club just invest for the future? It's something that he can be part of a major project, and I think that Arsenal will definitely need to be looking to reassure him on that. All right, time to move on to some transfer news. We got Dayot Upamecano for RB Leipzig. I mean, what a great defender he is. Great defensive talent. And Leipzig, of course, they have such a large pool of talent. They have so many scouts, and they just find all these great players, and they sign them before other major clubs do. And Upamecano, I mean, he's one of the best defenders in the Bundesliga. And, I mean, even Lewandowski said that Konate and Upamecano are a really tough defensive pair to face against for him. And if Lewandowski is a prolific goal scorer and just a top class striker, and that already is enough big praise for the for Upamecano specifically. And of course, he extended his contract because Upamecano was looking like he could be on a free transfer, leaving until 2021. But of course, he signed a new contract, and I think it's more of a strategic reason for the club and, of course, the player. Of course, he might get paid more, and he has a release clause, because that way the club can make sure that they don't lose him on a free transfer, and they will, of course, get money when he does eventually move on, because I don't think he'll be staying at Leipzig, because the amount of talent he has, I think he deserves to be in a top club, such as in the Premier League, La Liga, whatever league. And I think that according to the bill, the release clause is mounting up to 50 million euros. So it's going to be similar to Timo Werner, and I think we could see him leaving next season. So I'm pretty sure that he will be leaving 2021. So that way the club they have like a couple of years, I guess, after 2021. So that means that they can get a good price out of Upamecano. Most likely they're gonna ask for his release clause, which is 50 million, around that. And overall, good business from Leipzig, and of course, good thinking from the player. That way, he can be able to leave with a club with Leipzig willing to let go of him, because they realize that he's a top class player, and I don't think Leipzig is really what he views as his future. And just looking at Upamecano, I think that next season, if we see some specifically for the Premier League, because I know more about it. If we see any of those Premier League clubs like Arsenal or Tottenham or Chelsea still having those defensive issues, I think that Upamecano will most likely go there. Or another club like Man City. Maybe Man City's defense still needs work, then he could be going there as well. But overall, good decision from the player and Leipzig. And I think that 50 million euro release clause will be met at the end of the season, at the end of this new season coming up in the Bundesliga. If he keeps up his performances as a top class defender, and if he gets Leipzig, if he helps Leipzig, hold up a strong defensive, structure and line, and reach potentially the first or second in the Bundesliga or third, I think that then of course I think he will be moving on to another bigger club in Europe. Odsonne Edouard of Celtic. I mean, he came from PSG to Celtic, and he's been absolutely a prolific goal scorer. But Leicester City, alongside some other Premier League clubs, are interested in him. Specifically, Leicester City as well as Leeds United, who just got promoted to the Premier League, Arsenal, Crystal Palace, all of those keen on signing the French forward. Just looking at his stats and the way he plays, he's very, very just been an absolute treat for Celtic, and just really helping them win the title this last season. And it's looking like he has a great future in terms of what he can deliver to a club in terms of the goal output that he has. Just looking at his stats, 21 goals and 12 assists in 27 appearances for in the Scottish Premiership, which is absolutely incredible. Of course, you need to understand that the quality of the league in the Premier League and the Scottish Premiership is, of course, there's a difference. But in European competitions, he still has that prolific goal scoring and just overall talent in the attack. 6 goals and 5 assists in 13 appearances at European competitions such as the Europa League qualifiers, Champions League qualifiers. And you can see that interest, the reason behind the interest in Odsonne Edouard. Specifically for Leicester City, they're looking to potentially offload Karim Iheanacho because he hasn't been getting that many appearances. Of course, there's Jamie Vardy ahead of him. But I think that if Leicester City does get him, I think it could be a potential future couple of years that he could be there as a replacement for Jamie Vardy, who of course is getting older and isn't. He's had one of his best seasons, but of course it's not going to be most likely continuous, and I think they're looking to have him as a player that they can rely on. And of course, Brendan Rodgers was at Celtic, and he might be keen on reuniting with the player, and he probably has some good thoughts and good feelings about bringing him in at Leicester City for what the project that Brendan Rodgers has there. And looking at offloading Iheanacho to get the funds and get Edouard, I think would be a good move by Leicester City, because if Leicester City, of course, they're talented in terms of bringing in young talents, because he's only 22 years old, bringing him in and, getting him even better and used to the Premier League and put him in on a bigger spotlight, then that could mean that Leicester City will, move on from him like they did with Harry Maguire for such a large price. Of course, Leicester City is known to do this. I mean, Leicester City is one of the best recruitment in the Premier League and in Europe. And I think that this would be a good signing for them if Celtic is willing, because the Celtic manager is looking to keep him, of course, for another season, because he has contributed so much for the team and really helped them win the Premiership last season. Of course, 21 goals and 12 assists is a remarkable achievement. And of course, we will see what is his future, whether it's at Celtic or in the Premier League or another league. Looking at some of the recent news that came in from the Premier League, of course, is the Newcastle takeover failing. Now, this was an exciting transfer. We never covered it on the podcast, but looking at it from the sideline, just looking at Newcastle potentially moving on from their owner, Mike Ashley, which many Newcastle fans absolutely despise. I think it was a interesting scenario, I guess, in terms of bringing in another top big club. And I think it would have really pushed down other clubs such as Manchester United and Chelsea or Arsenal, because, of course, all that funding that could come from, the Saudi owners. And the proposed takeover was at 300 million euros. And, of course, the Saudi owned a development fund or something like that. And of course, some smaller stake owners were looking to take the club, but of course that process was stalled out for too long. And I'm not going to look at the political side or the Premier League side in terms of what they did, but looking more at how long they took and how they delayed it. And just, I feel really sad and for Newcastle fans in terms of they have had to suffer with the way their club has been treated and the disappointment that their club has been evolved with, this the way they play and how they've been performing. I think that it's going to be tough for the club to even just do what they were able to do this season, or the season that just ended, in terms of how they were on the table, how they were, I believe, in middle of the table. And I think that in order for them to do what they just did, it will be a miracle, or a lot of other clubs just not living up to expectations, because they've been, as some Newcastle fans describe it, like in a little bit of a limbo in terms of just not really doing anything in terms of transfer window. I mean, even Steve Bruce doesn't know if he's going to have his job. He didn't know if he was going to have his job. And Mike Ashley doesn't really want the club anymore. There's, of course, still links to another potential owner coming in, but just still looking at what's ahead for Newcastle, I think it's looking very, very grim, because they're suffering the disappointment of not having a new owner. And, of course, they're suffering the disappointment of not having a clear plan ahead of them, because they were still speculation around whether this transfer is going to come, this takeover is going to come through. And now that it hasn't, they have to focus on the season coming up. And Steve Bruce is going to have a hell of a task in front of him in maintaining what they have at Newcastle, and that is most likely staying in the league. I think it will be a relegation battle, and with strong clubs like Leeds United coming in, I think it's going to be looking like Newcastle will potentially be in the relegation battle. Of course, that could change if they somehow bring in, they invest in this transfer market as quickly as they can. That could change, but it's looking very, very grim for Newcastle. Moving on to our Wonderkid to watch, Harvey Elliot of Liverpool, 17 years old. Of course, Wonderkid is a young player who has a lot of potential to become a top-class player. And we're going to be looking at Liverpool's Wonderkid, Harvey Elliot. He's been absolutely tremendous in the Liverpool under-23s, and just shows a lot of potential. Of course, he hasn't been given that many Premier League appearances because, of course, I think it's because of his age, and just overall he's still developing compared to older players such as Curtis Jones, who have had more of that time to develop. And I think he needs that patience to see it out and understand potentially that he will get that chance in the future. But what he's been showing for Liverpool, and specifically to Jurgen Klopp and the coaching staff at Liverpool, is the right attitude and mentality and personality. So he's showing a commitment and belief in himself that is necessary to keep pushing pushing himself forward. Because let's be honest, a lot of players in football have that potential, but they don't really achieve it because they don't have that personality or commitment. And we see that personality and commitment. I mean, he looks very good on the ball. He's agile, and he has that balance to stay up and maintain the ball. But also, he reads the game well, according to Pep Linders, I believe, the assistant coach at Liverpool. And I think looking at what he provides for Liverpool's future is another group of youth players, such as Curtis Jones, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Harvey Elliott, and all these players. They provide a option for Liverpool to rely on in terms of having a strong future ahead of them, with players who have that quality and potential. And I think he serves as an attacking threat, a future attacking threat that could replace players such as Mohamed Salah, if he can maintain that potential and achieve that potential and show that determination. And he could be a great, great future signing for Liverpool. Well, that will be the end of this podcast. I just want to thank you all for listening and, of course, watching the podcast. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you are watching it on YouTube, please hit the like button and hit the subscription, and of course hit the bell as well. But if you aren't listening or watching the podcast on YouTube, of course, check out our YouTube channel, Football Baron. And, of course, you can see other videos on there as well. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all have a great day, and goodbye.